Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is The Edge of Adventure. My name is Adam Asher. Great to have you with us. It's always great to have you with us as we travel around the world, as we learn about amazing organizations doing things to serve others, to make the world a better place, as we get to know people who have chosen to serve others. And today's no exception. We're going to get to know Lewis Swann, who is the CEO and co founder at Sight.org. Sight.org. Lewis, welcome to the program, brother.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's put this into perspective. Sight.org helps who and where?
We work in a country called Togo. It's a little bitty country in West Africa, and we go to very remote parts of this country where there's zero access to eye care. And cataracts is a leading cause of blindness in sub-Saharan Africa, and it affects all ages, even the unborn. And we go into these places that otherwise would never have any doctor come to their doorstep, and we virtually go to their doorstep and their villages' doorsteps, and we offer free eye surgery that can be done in 20 minutes and result in a person's sight the next morning.
I have to believe that everything that you just said, I mean, there's so much there, so we're going to unpack it a
Yeah.
little bit. But
Yeah.
let's start by talking about the problem. Is this a common problem?
In this little country of Togo, we believe there's 30,000 blinded by cataracts. And this little country is about the size of West Virginia. And if I go into a village that has no eye care, or a village that's remote that has no access to eye care, if that village has 200 people, I expect to find a dozen people blinded by cataracts. And so whenever we go into a place that's rural in Africa, that's pretty far from any doctor, any major city, we can collect up to 200 patients for surgery pretty quickly. And we do up to 200 surgeries at a time when we go into these rural places for care. Yeah. But mainly it's malnutrition, water, the tropical sun. It's definitely a bigger problem where the more equatorial regions. But when your diet's corn, yam, and bread, there's not a lot of nutrients in that. And so we see a lot of people go blind.
We're talking today with Lewis Swann. He is CEO and co founder at Sight.org. How long does it take these surgeries? I mean, how long does it take to turn someone's life around in this way?
Well, it depends on the doctor. My doctor's a very, very good doctor. My whole team's African. Whenever I'm with my team, I'm usually the only Westerner there unless I bring somebody with me. But my doctor, let's just say that he can do up to 39 surgeries in a day, or 38 or 39, I think is his good day number right now. We started with him doing about 12 or 15 in a day. And so he's progressed over time. So essentially, when we go out, we'll have about 200 up to 200 patients lined up, and in 6 days all those patients are treated. When they get the surgery, it's about a 15-minute surgery, and then they get a patch over their eye, and the next morning we take that patch off, and the eye is just the most amazing organ. It can heal so quickly, and so we take that cataract out, we replace it with an artificial lens, and when we take that patch off the next morning, they can see.
Lewis, is this the type of thing that is an ailment for those who might be older, older adults, or who do you guys end up
I would say
treating?
mostly, but we find people that are children. We find people that were born with cataracts, very often, or on occasion, while a mom's pregnant, she will actually suck the nutrients up in the birthing process, the I guess the pregnancy process. Her body would take up the nutrients, and the child would develop cataracts during pregnancy. And at times, the child will take the nutrients away from the mom, and then the mom goes blind. And so then I've found several mothers that went blind during pregnancy, and by the time they give birth, the cataracts are so thick they can't see. They are blind. And here in the West, we don't see that. If you were to go blind as a result of cataracts, you would have to neglect your cataracts for about 20 years in the West. But over there, we see people go blind in the matter of a few months, typically.
Once again, this is The Edge of Adventure. You're listening to the audio podcast or you're watching the video podcast. My guest today is Lewis Swann. He is CEO and co-founder at sight.org. And it's great to have him on the show today. So let's talk about actually, I'm going to pull up a picture here. I want you to tell me about this picture. And if you're listening to the audio version, you can always go to theedgeofadventure.com, look for the post that correlates with this conversation. You'll find the video version there as well, because I know we've got people listening from around the world through the different podcast platforms, which is awesome. I'm a radio guy and I love that. But you can always tune in and watch the video version as well, get to see a few pictures. And we'll be showing different pictures throughout the conversation, and certainly won't be pausing to talk about each one. But this is an important one because it's an important story, and I mean it's important because of her and her story, her unique story. But I think it also is so representative of sight.org and what you do and the difference you're making. So tell me about this picture.
Yeah, this was on my last trip. This girl is 13 years old, and she was born with cataracts, fully developed cataracts, and also deaf. So when we found her, she's 13 years living both deaf and blind in a really rural part of West Africa. And so when you're living with just taste, touch, and smell, you're living on 8% of situational awareness in terms of things that happen around you. You only have about 8% uh, built up in those three senses. Sight is a whole 75%. And so she got a surgery, and she actually, when she was at the operating table, she didn't know what was happening because she's deaf and she's blind. She has no idea what's happening. So we had to put her under full sedation. So children are a more lengthy process, but we gave her did the surgery on both eyes. And when she woke up, she didn't know what was happening. So she's trying to unpatch her eyes, and she kept doing it. And so she fully exposed her eyes, which you're not supposed to do before 4 hours. And we did drops like crazy, and it was just amazing. It was we were all just praying and doing drops. And the next morning, she was able to see. And so whenever I went into her room, I put my hand out, and she just a big slap. She just grabbed my hand, and then I walked out the door, and she followed me through the doorway and walked me outside and followed me outside. And I put my hand out again, and again she grabbed it. And so we just kept doing that over and over. She probably grabbed my hand about 15, 20 times like that. And her sight's probably not great. Whenever you haven't seen your whole life, your eye and your brain start to disconnect because they've never communicated with each other. But she can certainly see a hand put out in front of her, which was never there before.
Lewis, uh, is this story unique? I mean, what is it like serving and helping people like this in such a miraculous way?
You know, we've done 1,300 surgeries this year. This is our best year we've done, and we're looking at 1,500, maybe even beyond that next year. Every one of them's unique, in terms of what it's a mass of people, and so you kind of just see the masses. But I've spent a lot of time with these people individually, and everybody has their own situation, life situation. Um, Uniqueness it's just her life has changed. And so for her, she represents a lot of people, and just like her, lives are changed. When you're in a rural part of Africa and farming is really the primary occupation, you can't farm if you're blind. And so there's a lot that comes with that. And there's some stigmas. It's a place where there's some kind of dark beliefs, and so there's some stigmas that are not great. But there's also the freedom. Blindness in rural Africa is prison, essentially.
This is The Edge of Adventure. That's the voice of Lewis Swann, CEO and co founder at sight.org. You mentioned that most of these surgeries are to correct cataract. All right. Somebody like me, so many of our listeners that don't have expertise in this area. What is cataract and what is the cataract surgery? Again, you kind of have to
Yeah.
simplify it for folks like me, but
Yeah.
give us a brief understanding about what the problem is and how you are able to make the correction and then open up a whole new world for the patients.
Yeah, cataracts is the main thing we do. We do some other treatments. We have pterygium. We have the eye can become cancerous, which requires chemotherapy and removal and ongoing chemotherapy. And we have 3 children going through chemotherapy right now that had that situation. And I keep bringing up children, but they stand out, but some reason we see them have eye cancer the most. But in terms of the treatment itself for cataracts, it's a cataract. We all have a lens in our eye, and over time, that lens can get foggy, and so it can get foggy for a number of reasons: malnutrition, uh, contaminated water, dehydration. These things could attribute to that lens getting foggy. So what we do is we put people under local anesthesia, and so just local anesthetic. They're awake. Most of our patients are awake during surgery, and we are able to, not to get too graphic, cut through the eye, pull that cataract out, and replace it with an artificial lens. And then that eye gets patched. We typically don't even have to suture it. It just gets patched. And the next morning they open their eye and they can see. And what's amazing, and I've seen pretty traumatic moments with in surgery. And I mean, just a surgery just looks traumatic in itself. And the next morning it looks like pink eye, like, you would never know that this person just had surgery. And so the eye is just an amazing, amazing organ that could be treated and healed. And so for us to go to remote parts of the world and actually be the solution to this problem, it's not a far-fetched thing to do. It's not a crazy surgery that's going to result in bed rest for weeks on end. For example, you really get your eyes patches taken off the next morning and then go on with your life. You have to do drops, and we do follow-up care, and we do see them a week after that and other follow-up care following that if needed. But it's very simple, and we can do the masses. Yeah.
Okay, Lewis, let's put you into context. You worked previously with Mercy Ships, and we've, of course, had them on the Edge of Adventure podcast. Great organization.
Yeah.
And they you can also find out more about them, of course, across social media, including in the Rugged Compass mobile app. They are great participants in that app, and I always enjoy seeing their posts and keeping up with what they're doing. So you worked for a period of time, served for a period of time with Mercy Ships, I should say, and I don't know, take me back. I wanna, go back to that experience and then what led you to serving in this way and why Togo? I know it's a lot of a lot of
Yeah.
questions all at once, but I wanna get to the heart of how you find yourself here. No.
Yeah. So I was on the ship for just under 3 years in public relations, and honestly, I was there to serve, and I was a Christian. I'm Christian, but didn't view myself as a missionary or that type. I would say if anybody called me a missionary, I'd correct him and tell him I'm just here to serve. And after a year, I just hit a breaking point in my spiritual walk that took a shift, and it took a big turn. And so I started to get serious, and the Lord just started moving my heart, man. Pretty quickly, he just started showing me the need. And I was seeing really preventable stuff and really great needs that I had. It's a very long story, so it's hard to really break it down. But let's just say that over the accumulation of a year, I realized that I'm not supposed to leave Africa. And so I haven't. That was 10 years ago. And it's actually gotten worse. I go more and more now than ever. And so it's getting fun. But yeah, I
Why
know
the
I'm leaving
connection?
out so
Why the
much
connection
information.
with Togo in particular when you think about Togo and I know
I
you.
I personally believe it's where God called me. There's a lot of rural blindness. I'm a missionary too, and so there's a lot of the need there as well in that and the spiritual aspects. But I like working in Togo, And this is something I would encourage for people that are listening in terms of like, where should I go? Anywhere is great. The need for you can find needs everywhere. They're always there, and anywhere you go, you're going to be able to make an impact. However, one thing I like about Togo, or appreciate being in Togo, is that they speak French, and that's one country primarily, be it France, that really speaks French, that's in the West. And so you don't see that many humanitarian things happening in Togo. I am not competing with anybody. If I were to stop doing eye care in rural Togo, I don't, we go to places where I would not expect anybody to follow and fill our shoes anytime soon. And so where we are and where we make this impact, it's a real need, and there's just not anybody else to do it. And so that's one thing I found, like, if you're thinking, oh, I want to work in the third world, where do I go? One of the first things we typically do is who speaks my language. And that's great. And go there if that's where you feel called. But let's just say that if you go to places that are less common languages, you're going to find a lot less people like you trying to do what you're doing. And it comes with obstacles. I'm not great at French even still. I can get around, but I'm also making a very big impact in a place that wouldn't have that care otherwise.
Lewis, let's talk about let's go back a little bit. I mean, you've shared already a little bit about this, but let's delve into it a little bit more. The model that site.org uses and why it is so effective. Because what you've described to me, I think I did a little bit of research here. I think probably your first year, you guys
37,
did like 37 surgeries. Is that
I
right?
think so.
Okay. And now you're talking about 1,300 a year, 1,500 a year. There's something about this model that works. Tell me what it is.
When you start a clinic in a city, like, especially if you're like, choose your bigger city wherever in the third world, eventually you're going to run out of patients, or you're going to have to wait for new cataracts or new whatever to come about. And so if you're in the capital city doing cataract surgery, you have to wait. And so there's literally only so much you can do, and which may be fine. There's a huge population in the capital, but that's also where most of the eye doctors reside. So for me, and the way this program went in the very beginning was to go to these remote places where there is no eye care. And so we do not have a limitation on patients. And so I have sometimes volunteer doctors that join me, and they're so shocked that I can find so many patients. And the reason being is because nobody's been there. And we literally find people that have been blind for 20 years. And so the reason they've been blind for 20 years is they've literally sat there for 20 years without anybody coming within their own vicinity. And go tell somebody that makes $20 in a year that's in the barter system to drive 6 hours south in a huge city of 1 million people when they've never left their village, and then come up with a few $100s to cover the surgery and house yourself and feed yourself and all that business. It's just, forget it. It just doesn't happen. And so with our model, we go to those types of people, those people that have that huge burden of limitation. Very few people in this part of the world have ever left their village. So to travel far is just not going to happen. And so we do that burden. We carry that burden for them. We take all of our equipment. We take all of our staff. We do a week of screening. We find them. We do a week of surgery, and then the following week we do a post-op, and then we do ministry the following week after that, and then we go off to the next village. And we also do a lot of maintenance. That's taking care of the new blindness that does come. We don't go places and never come back. We do deal with the next year's cataracts and the next year's cataracts in those regions. But when we go to a new region, we're very often finding people that have been blind for a decade and well beyond at times.
That's the voice of Lewis Swann. He's the CEO and co-founder at site.org. Let's talk about the other co-founder. Tell me, I don't know, I know a little bit, but I need you to fill
Peter.
us in on Peter, this other great guy that you work so closely with.
Peter is a person that whenever I knew I was called to Africa, I asked the Lord for my calling, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. and I did not know what it would look like. But whenever I said a very, very big yes, everything in my spirit pointed this man. There's Peter in the photo. Everything in my spirit pointed this man named Peter. And I went to Peter, and Peter was just a West African pastor. And whenever I went to him, I had this understanding just in my heart that I'm supposed to be a part of this man's life, and he barely knew me. And so whenever I asked him what his calling was, he explained that a few years prior, the Lord gave him a vision showing him all these blind people in rural Africa that he was supposed to go to. And he said the Lord told him to go to these places, give sight to the blind, and follow up with the gospel. And this guy is a guy of minimal means, West African pastor, real faithful guy, but just not with the means. And he faithfully stepped out in accordance to his faith. And 2 years later, this random guy from Texas comes up to him saying, "What is your calling?" Not knowing that that very guy from Texas has already agreed with the Lord to do whatever comes out of his mouth. And so when he described giving sight to the blind in rural Africa, I already said yes to whatever that was, and it's strange, and I know it seems so crazy to others, but it was just that much of a conviction, and that's what led us to these rural parts first and foremost, and that's why we've been there ever since, and we were the most humble program in the beginning. A beat-up car that couldn't even hardly drive through the Capitol without being shamed because of how beat up it was, and but now we're doing pretty well.
That's the voice of Lewis Swann, CEO and co founder at sight.org, where they give sight and the gospel to Togo, Africa. All right, we here on the Edge of Adventure, we have all sorts of organizations that come on the show, all sorts of motivation and hearts. That maybe they come from different places. The hearts are very much the same. Hearts for service, for making the world a better place, for giving of themselves and their time and their energy and their funds and all that to help others. But the stories are different, and oftentimes they come at it from a different perspective of faith. Sometimes faith is a factor, sometimes it's not. I know for sight.org, faith does play a role, you and your Christian faith. The question that I'm going to ask here is sort of the significance and meaning behind sight. Is there any correlation between the work that you do and the work of the gospel? Is there a metaphor at work here at all?
You know, um, Jesus had compassion on those who came to him that had ailments and that were sick and that were blind. And he responded, and the scripture says that he healed all that came to him, asking for service. And so we respond with that same torch, and we give our efforts, and we give our love, and we've all been messed up people. I mean, I was the most messed up guy. It took me a long time to explain to everybody and wrap their minds around that I was actually a Christian because of how far off and just how wrecked this guy was. But yeah, just he sees differently, and so yeah, we're all indebted to all that's been done for us, and we are very motivated when we continue to do this work, and we're empowered. Empowered. We can't do it in our own strength.
Lewis, as you have worked for so many years in Africa, and you've worked in this way, and you've seen a lot. Um, what are what are a couple of moments in time when you just there was something special about it that you knew that this moment was going to serve as motivation for years to come. I think we all have that where um, you, you encounter that moment in time where you think, okay, this is my calling. This is what I got to do, and I'm going to do what it takes.
I think it's largely that's a very loaded question. But I think it's largely, sitting down, like, we see these people in masses. We'll do 160 or 180 surgeries, and there's this massive group of people that are sitting before me that look a little just they're waiting, they're patient, they just had surgery, they don't feel great from the surgery. Some of them can see and they can celebrate, and some of them wanna celebrate, but they feel they need a Tylenol to help them through that time, and, but when I sit with them, and whenever I'm able to take the time and sit with people individually, I see lives that have just been so changed, and I've just there's just a thousand stories running through my mind of times that I've sit and there's just so much going on in their mind. Why would these people do this to me? Or why would they do this for me? And why would this happen? And they just don't get it. I mean, it's just mind blowing to them. And very often they believe they're cursed. This is a part of the world where often they think they're cursed, and so even if they don't follow our what we call the way, at least they don't think they're cursed anymore and have that stigma upon themselves. And so I love seeing people see, but I love a lot of the other baggage that gets to come off too. And so it's just individuals that are just wildly impacted for a better life. It's there's nothing more motivating than that.
Greatest challenge, Lewis, what comes to mind?
Seeing it come to an end and making that impact where we're not seeing people that have been blind for 10 years. I'd like to see that in Togo where that ship turns and where we start to see people that have been blind for a year and we find them versus 10 years or 20 years. That's my biggest challenge, that there's people out there that we have had a hard time reaching, and and I really want to reach them.
Lewis, I know that, if I'm not mistaken, you and your family served back in the days of mercy ships. You guys were all there, right?
I actually met my wife 2 months before I ended my time there, and so, I met my wife there, 2 months prior and asked her if she would, quit her job in Canada and come back to Africa and help me start this little program, and she immediately said yes, and then I thought, "Don't you need to think about it?" I was like, "You're okay?" Well, but she had already heard from the Lord, and I didn't know that, and so she jumped on board, and so she helped me start this too.
Well, speak to the families of people like you, right? You are very passionate about this work. I'm sure it takes a lot out of you in terms of time
Yeah.
and energy, and often you have had to travel. Um, w- Speak to the families of those who are close to people like you.
I think my wife has carried a lot of burden in terms of my going away, and for me and my part, I really have to always remember my primary ministry is my family, and really don't leave ministry, at work time, and not bring it everywhere I go all the time, and make it the primary focus of our household, when it's just me and my kids and my wife. I think, separating that's real important, and also we have to take sabbaticals, for people in my shoes. um, I'm very concerned about people that go, 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 and it's just like, you gotta drink before you can pour, and a lot of people are just so dry and have really nothing else to give, and they really gotta take a big step back, and honestly, it's silly to think that the whole world is waiting on us. There's other things happening, and we have to take a big step back and, and take those sabbaticals and take that time with family and the Lord if you're a Christian, and then be strengthened to carry on another day.
Great advice from Lewis Swann, an awesome guy, my guest today from Sight.org. He is CEO and co founder as they give Sight in Togo, Africa. Great to have him on the show. How can people help?
Some people may wanna come. Very often, I'm not a fundraiser type. It's the most awkward thing in the world to me, and usually I never say give, but that's what I'm supposed to say at this time. And so, we're looking at 1,500 surgeries next year and, on a and very possibly up to 2,000. we have 30,000 people blinded in Togo. And like I said, I wanna see that ship turn. And currently, between us and the other NGOs working in Togo, we're all doing about 5,000 a year as a whole. All the nonprofits together, we're doing about 5,000 a year, and that's just about how many cataracts are developing each year. We're actually just past the amount of cataracts developing each year. And so we want to go beyond what's developing and actually start to see those 30,000 people go down to a much lower number to where it's actually maintainable and help us to reach that person that's waiting for 10 years, that's just waiting on someone like us to come to their doorstep and to give that opportunity for them to truly have their life back. And so, yeah, it's $150 for every person that gets to see. That's the amazing thing. We've really cranked it down, and 100% of that donation goes straight to Africa. We have donors that cover all U.S. operations, my salary, and everything like that. And so, anybody that gives, 100% is going to reaching that person that's just waiting.
And you can find out more, you can give, come alongside them, contact them, encourage them. If nothing else, just let them know that you saw the podcast today and heard the podcast, and that you're appreciative of what they're doing. And yeah, if it's the kind of thing that has touched your heart in a special way, be
It-
obedient to that and come alongside them and help them out and help change these lives. Site.org for more information. And of course, my guest today is Lewis Swann. He's CEO and co-founder. I guess we're going to wrap up with this question, brother. Why in the world would you choose this life of service?
My family had a business that's been in business for 125 years. And so it was very much expected for me to step behind in line in that legacy, which is amazing. It's like fifth generation business. And I tried. I did it a little bit, and my role there just kept depleting, and my role in Africa kept growing until it was just the calling was so obvious that I had to step away. And so I chose this, and because it's just what I'm meant to do, and it's where I'm wired. I'm better at it than anything else, and so it's just apparent that this is where it is for me.
Lewis Swann has been my guest today here on the Edge of Adventure. Look him up online, site.org, site.org for more information. And of course, you can always look for theedgeofadventure.com and look for the link in the post, regardless of the social media platform, regardless of where you find it, including in the Rugged Compass mobile app. We always have the link that will get you to the organization. So please follow up. My request, if you feel called to support them, please do. And if nothing else, reach out to them and contact them and encourage them, because they're doing great things. These organizations are doing amazing things, but it isn't easy, and it's not like the challenges don't come up. And we're all human. We face our moments of discouragement. So you be sure that doesn't happen. Encourage them and let them know you appreciate what they're doing. And what a unique calling, brother! You have a very unique history, unique calling, and putting it to use the way that you're doing is inspiring. And so then I'm going to say to everybody out there listening as well, you have a unique calling, you have unique skills. You've got a unique skill set and opportunities. So put them to use helping others. And that's when the greatest adventure in your life will start. Um, Lewis, thanks for coming on the show, brother. I look forward to hearing more in the future. And I'm just appreciative of all you do.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me, Adam.
And thank you all for joining us for another edition of the Edge of Adventure podcast. Join us again next time. Thanks so much.